Back in the 80s and early 90s, I did a lot of work for a local weekly newspaper. They put out 10 weekly publications, obviously not a Boston Globe size operation, but pretty big. 10 papers is not a small operation. I was their Unix guy. I did the programming on their, originally it was Tandy Xenix machines, and then we switched over to Intel and SCO Unix, and I did all of their advertising programs that collected revenue and all that for the advertisers. Anyway, there was a young girl there that started out working on the loading dock, actually. Very bright, very ambitious, and by 1991 or 1992 or so, she was vice president of this operation. Pretty impressive. I was sitting in her office one afternoon waiting to talk to her about something, probably to do with the programs that I was writing, and she was printing. Now, she was using a Mac. We used a lot of Macs there. And it was slow. This was System 7 days. All computers were pretty slow, and System 7 was not a great operating system. I do remember back in those days, you had to carry around a tool to open up a lot of the Macs. Boy, things have changed. Anyway, she was printing, and it was going slow, and she was complaining, and I said, if you wiggle your mouse around, it will speed up the printing. Now, she wasn't a fool. She'd taken some computer classes, and she looked at me, and she said, why? And I said, well, it's a matter of interrupts. You know how if you're printing, the computer has to wait for an interrupt from the printer to know that the print character that it sent was accepted. And she had taken enough classes that, yeah, she knew that. And I said, well, and you also know that when you move your mouse, that generates interrupts to let the computer know that you want to do something on the screen. And yeah, she knew that too. I said, so what happens is this. If you move your mouse around very quickly, the computer has to pay attention to that because moving your mouse is much more important than printing. And since it can't handle all of these interrupts at once, what it does is it switches to a different mode for the printing where it just gives up paying attention to the interrupts and the data just goes out the printer port and that's it. So that effect is that it speeds up your printing. And she swallowed that. So I talked to her about whatever she wanted to talk about, and she moved her mouse around like crazy on the desktop, having convinced herself that it really did speed up the printing, and I left and went on about my work. About a week later, I was in her office again, and the president happened to walk in as she was printing and moving her mouse around like crazy. He looked at her. He was no computer fool at all. He looked at her and said, what are you doing? And she looked at him, and she said, well, I'm speeding up my printing. Tony said, and at that moment, of course, she looked at me, and she saw the look on my face, and he looked at me, and he saw the look on my face, and he started laughing, and she got so mad at me. Well, I think she threw me out of her office for a week. I don't think I was allowed to talk to her for a week.